He's been an amazing partner. He appreciates what I do. I appreciate what he does. And it is kind of like a match made in heaven. I have no complaints.
Because we're bigger, our toys have to be bigger to make us feel like we did when we were little.
Oh,
You're little, your toy is big to you.
Hey Toy Family, welcome to Halloween week with the Marsham Toy Hour, where we discuss anything and everything designer toys. I'm Gary Ham.
I'm Teresa Hawkins.
I'm George Gaspar.
And guys, since it's Halloween week, I thought I'd reach out to a creature curator. Actually, he's been on before. It's been about a year and a half since he's been on. And last episode, we were all talking about the amazing paint master that he did for his humongous Kaiju Killer toy that's being produced by Instinctoy. And it was seen on display at Taipei Toy Fest a couple weekends ago. So we were just all floored and enamored with it. So I mentioned I should probably reach out to him and see if we can get him on. And surprisingly enough, he's back from Taipei. His plane just landed back in Ohio yesterday. And he's willing to come on and push through the travel exhaustion and any jet lag he has to come on and have a good time with us. So let's welcome back James Groman.
Hey, thanks. Glad to be back.
Can we call you Jim now that we've had you on twice?
Yes.
Sweet.
I would say that's what my friends call me. And James, like I've said in the past, is it's kind of stuck over the years. But yeah, it's like once you get to know me, just call me Jim.
I might have to wait till next time because I wasn't on the show last time. So I have to get at least one podcast in of calling you James.
Yeah, and actually, George, I've never met George in person.
Yeah, no. So I'm going to have to stick with James for now.
Oh, George. I'm jumping on the Jim train. I've seen you at events, Jim.
Yes, a number of occasions.
Jim. Well, Jim, I think before we get started, we should probably, there might be people who aren't familiar with you exactly, or maybe didn't listen to the episode you were on previously. I mentioned it was a year and a half ago. That was the one where your good friend Chris Reiniak played guest host along with myself. So anyone who's not familiar with you, I highly suggest you go back and give that a listen. It was season 1, episode 48. We touched on his long toy career, lots of great stories and fun had. But this time around, I really want to get to know like what's been going on the past year and a half with you. Get caught up. So what I'll do is I'll just do a quick abridged snapshot of your toy career and your backstory, so people have a little bit idea of who you are and what you've done, and then we'll get talking to you on all your current stuff, Jim. So real quick, Jim he's a toy legend. He's probably worked on many toy lines that were part of your childhood or maybe adulthood. He began his toy career working for American Greetings in Ohio, and that's where he helped design and develop toy lines like Mad Balls and Care Bears, My Pet Monster, Popples, Strawberry Shortcake, and many more. Anything that American Greetings had a license for, I'm sure Jim had a hand in. And then for American Greetings, he started doing freelance. He started working with companies that you're probably very familiar with, Hasbro, Playing Mantis, Ertl Collectibles. He's worked on toy lines like Star Wars, Transformers, GoBots, Godzilla, my personal favorite, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You sculpted those, and I love that line, Jim.
Thank you.
And then you started dipping your toes into designer toys. That was around 2012. You worked with Cure Toys on the Brainbug Boogeyman, and then you worked with Lulabelle Toys on the Rotten Rex, and then Tag Art Gallery, and then Instinct Toys. And anyone who's not familiar, what you're probably known for are your large-scale toys like King Corpse, which won a Designer Toy Award for Toy of the Year, Rotten Rex, Diceratops, and the one we were talking about last episode, the Kaiju Killer, that's going to be coming out with Instinctoy. So you've had a lot of success in really all areas of toys, and this is just a teeny tiny sampling of everything you've done. Jesus, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Hey, thanks. Got me caught up. Remind me of some things I might have forgotten about.
It's crazy to think all the things that you've had a hand in. I mean, that's insane.
And it's like 30-something years, 35 years I've been doing it. So that's sometimes I look back at that and I just can't. I still feel like I don't have that larger body of work. But then when I look back, I go, man, there's still things that I see every once in a while that I forgot I did.
This toy, she has this toy from her childhood sitting at her desk. And I'm like, you probably did that. Like, you probably helped design that, which is nuts. And goodness knows if I still have toys from my childhood chilling around that you had a hand in. It's probably possible. It's crazy.
You know what I found weird, too, is Jim is probably one of the nicest guys I've ever met in the designer toy scene. And super approachable, easy to talk with, just friendly, good guy. But then your toy designs, Jim, are like crazy scary. Like I would think you're probably this scary, super intimidating to approach based on your toy designs, but you couldn't be further from your toy designs at all.
I've been told that many times. And I went to a convention one time, and I went to get my hotel room, and I said I was with the convention, and they said, "You don't look like you're with this convention." Just because I guess I kind of have more like a school teacher look or something. I don't know.
You can teach my kids anytime, Jim. It's just funny, the contrast. It's just something I noticed.
Toys are for everyone.
There you go.
Toys are for everyone.
Jim, I mentioned it was Halloween week. Are you a big Halloween guy? 'Cause I know you love monsters and creating creatures and all that sort of stuff. And you're a family man. Did you do a lot of Halloween stuff with the family?
No, I look forward to our tradition is now that, my kids, I'm an empty nester. My kids are out of the house. I got a 22-year-old, and then I got a 31-year-old daughter who has kids of her own. So I go and hang out at their house for Halloween, and or go out with the grandkids and make the rounds. And I love it. So that's a tradition. I love Halloween for that reason, and seeing all their new costumes and watching as they get older, the choices they make in costumes and stuff. So I have two little girl granddaughters and then a little boy who's 2. He's into dinosaurs and everything, and I know he's got a really awesome dinosaur costume this year. So
that's awesome. I have a 3-year-old, almost 4 on Halloween, but he's obsessed with dinosaurs. But this year they're both boys are going as cops for Halloween. But it must have been pretty amazing. I wonder what it's like growing up in your household, because you mentioned a son and a daughter. You designed toys and worked with brands that they were very familiar with, and I imagine their friends would come over to the house, and their friends probably thought you were the coolest dad ever and looked at your office and were probably enamored with everything that you do as a job. Like, you're the cool dad that you want to take to career day, because nothing's better than designing toys, right? Or maybe being a fireman at the time or a police officer.
I did a lot of talks at schools and everything, and I loved it. I remember my daughter, she used to love it. She'd be the queen for a day because, of course, you're doing something that kids relate to. So, Of course, their aspirations are like, wow, this guy works on Spider-Man and Batman and Godzilla and all this stuff. So she used to love it. My son was one where he'd bring his friends over, and they all were so into it and wanted to go up in my studio and see all my toys. But then my son was kind of like, can we go outside and play?
He's over it, and all the friends think they just idolize you.
Yeah, he was into Batman and Pokemon and all that stuff when he was a kid. But he used to come up in my studio and hang out all the time. And he was one that always wanted to play with things on the shelves that he couldn't play with. So almost like after a while, I think he kind of got a negative about it, where they weren't playthings anymore. They were these things that were precious, because in fact he brought some friends over one time and he actually said, let's go somewhere where we can actually play with the toys.
That's awesome.
And can we not gloss over, you did say you're a grandpa, right?
Yes.
So can we not gloss over that the fact that the Kaiju Killer was sculpted by a grandpa? Like, can you picture your grandpa sculpting that? Anybody here? Anybody listening? Can you picture your grandfather sculpting the Kaiju Killer?
That's
Like,
true.
come on. That's incredible.
That's pretty awesome.
That's the coolest grandpa around.
Oh, and you know what? My grandkids, they love it. And even the girls do. Some of my first shots, I remember opening the box with Rotten Rexes, and I got shots of them running around with those things like it was Christmas morning. So they love it. They really appreciate it. And they're always coming in and asking what I have new that's coming out. And then my grandson, he's a little young. He's just starting to talk. But I gave him a Rotten Rex that was kind of made from mixed parts and everything. And he slept with that thing. And it's the only one I've ever seen broken. He found a way to break it.
Oh, that's awesome.
He snapped his head right off of it.
Gosh, kids are amazingly good at that.
Kids
Kids.
at breaking things.
Yes, exceptional. They're very good.
Yeah, little boys, they can be bruisers. But I took it as a compliment. Like, he loved it so much, he maybe hugged it a little too hard one day.
It's cool to see them actually played with, too, like, because that doesn't happen with all the adult collectors.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, the BC blasters. My grandson sitting on the floor playing with the BC blasters and making tank sounds and stuff like that. It's like, I still think that way. Even when I'm doing designer toys, I still think of them as something that they should have some kind of accessorizing or playability, and, the heart that comes out and the rib cage that pops off, and, the weapons that they might come with and things. So I still try to bring that into even the collector's market.
You could see that even with the Kaiju Killer, all the extra accessories and weapons you had and interchangeable. Well, actually, Kaiju Killer doesn't have interchangeable heads, but that's the King Corpse, yeah?
He will.
Okay. He will. Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of a surprise that Hiroto Okubo kind of sprung on me the other day. He said, we're going to do 2 heads on that one too. And he already had mocked it up in ZBrush and had the actual 3D print at the show in Taipei. So,
holy cow.
That's interesting that he innovated on top of your design like that.
Oh, yeah. He's a talented artist.
Is the Kaiju Killer your concept, your brainchild, or did Hiroto also have a role in that as well?
It's mine. It came out of a brainstorming session that after King Corpse was looking really good and he was really excited about it, and we did a Skype call, and he said, what else you got? What else you got? And I said, well, I have about 5 ideas I'll send you. And he goes, I can't wait. You have to pitch me one now. So that was the first I chose to pitch to him, and it was just a concept, no drawing as of yet or anything. And he goes, I want to do that first. And I go, you haven't seen the other ones yet. And so I drew up a bunch of other ones and sent them over, and he says, I still want to do that one first. So, and then he said, I want to do this one next and this one next. And he wanted to do everything I sent him. So he's been an amazing partner. He appreciates what I do. I appreciate what he does. And it is kind of like a match made in heaven. I have no complaints.
Fate, kismet, whatever it is, you guys were meant to be together. And I don't know the story of how you met Hiroto. Can you tell us that? Like, how did you meet Hiroto, and how did your relationship with Instinctoy blossom?
It was Rotten Rex was, I don't think it was the first show that Rotten Rex appeared at was a New York Comic-Con. And then that next, I'm trying to think if that was 2013, 2014. At DCon. It was one of the first DCons I ever went to. I did a bunch of painted up versions of Rotten Rex to sell at the show at Lulubell's booth. So it happened that Hiroto had Instinctoys set up right next to Lulubell Toys, of all things, So there's my future partner, and his company was not nearly as large as it is now. He's really done a great job. He's a great businessman, so he's kind of grown the brand greatly over the last few years. But he's set up next to me kind of with a table, and that we were having lotteries for the Rotten Rexes I had painted. And then there was one that I did first. It was the very first Rotten Rex I ever painted, and I just maxed it out. It was called the Ultimate Rotten Rex. It probably had like 30, 40 colors on it, and
Jesus,
rendered, and every little vein painted. And he wanted it so bad. And I was talking to him through an interpreter. And she said he really wants it really bad. He wants to be in a lottery. And so he took a lottery ticket, and he won.
Oh, awesome.
He was the first ticket pulled, and he loved it. And he just kept coming over it and just like holding it up in front of me and just going and explaining how awesome it was. And then he gave me one of his little Vincent, oh, not little, but he's got those, the Vincent figures that he does, his character.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me one of those as a gift because he loved the Rotten Rex so much. And there's this Vincent figure in it's a black foam lined box, and then Vincent's in this velvet bag. It's just beautiful presentation, and I'm like, wow, this guy has it together. And then we stayed in touch after that, and then he wanted to do his own deco version of Rotten Rex from his company. And so I introduced him to Luke at Lulubell, and he bought a bunch of Rotten Rexes, and then he made spray masks, and they're all based on my original paint job that he got. And he actually manufactured 2 different Rotten Rexes, limited edition, like a purple metallic and a red metallic with all the details and everything. So after that, we were talking one time, and he said, and I think I might even said, we should figure out something we can do together. And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And then the rest is kind of history.
Now that's a great story. Like, your relationship with Hiroto is amazing. Like, I think most companies, you're in a very unique position with Instinctoy, because most companies you would have restrictions and limitations on colors and accessories, but it really seems like you just get to do exactly what you want to do, Jim. From number of accessories to removable parts to tons of different colors. Like, if it ends up being a $500, $600 retail toy, like that doesn't scare him off. Like, Hiroto is going to see it through, and these things are probably going to sell. So like, you're in such a unique position. Like, Instinctoy is unlike any other company that I can think of, and they're awesome.
Yeah, and I don't make any bones about it, man. I appreciate it because it is. I've been doing toys long enough that I know that just doesn't happen.
No.
Maybe it happens after 35 years. Maybe it does happen after a long time, perhaps. But no, I'm definitely appreciative. And also, I know a lot of times I create the character and I do the sculpt and da-da-da-da, and it's so awesome to do my own stuff. But Hiroto and I discuss it. I've done things like Kaiju Killer had a weapon that we decided wasn't going to work, and he kind of had an idea for a weapon, so that the weapon that we ended up doing is kind of based on some ideas of mine and ideas of his. So it's not like he's just saying do whatever you want and I'll make it. He's throwing in ideas. We're refining it together, and I love that too. Everyone loves to go in and say, hey, this is what I want to make, just make it.
Yeah.
And that's great, but I have a lot of fun collaborating. I love hearing other people's ideas and finding ways to make things better and better.
Yeah, having someone that you respect enough to collaborate with on that level, that's awesome that you have that with Hiroto.
Are you like George, where you do clay sculpts, or are you digital?
Yeah. George, are you digital yet?
No, not yet.
Yeah, well, I'm really not. I use ZBrush Sculptress. Actually, I was using Sculptress first, and I was using that. Sculptress it's the kind of alpha version of ZBrush, that it's a free program and not as powerful and not as many tools, but it's actually kind of a cool program to play around with before you get ZBrush. At American Greetings, I was using it to make, if we were pitching a computer animated show, I would use Sculptress to build a model so it looked more like what we were actually pitching. Rather than Photoshop rendering, I wanted to show a 3D image. So I started playing around with it to do that. I built like a squid creature and a alligator monster and all the stuff with it, and really loved it. But I still prefer to sculpt traditionally with clay. I do want to use ZBrush, but to learn it, and George may be finding the same thing, it's very time consuming, and there's a long time before you get that aha moment. And I actually have clients that request, no, I want a traditional sculpture. I don't want it in ZBrush. I want it to be sculpted by hand. So long story short, no, I am doing more of my work with traditional Sculpey.
Now, I feel like I saw you're doing initial sculpt concepts for Kaiju Killer using ZBrush or digitally sculpting, and I think you're doing them in ZBrush, and then later you decided to hand sculpt them?
Yeah, that was almost like I was getting kind of cocky, and I said, I can make this whole thing in ZBrush. And then as I started to work, I'm going,
you're like, nope.
No. Yeah, maybe I did. I at least forced myself to do some concept work.
Okay. Just
to get a feel for the face. And he changed pretty radically since some of my initial concepts in ZBrush. But he originally had two eyes. I was kind of avoiding the Cyclops because of, the Madball stuff I was doing. And then, Ray Harryhausen has that real famous Cyclops. But Hiroto really loved the Cyclops. And we thought maybe we'd do a two-eyed head someday. But yeah, my first concepts were 3D, but still love putting my hand in clay.
Do you have any idea how long it took to sculpt that figure, just the Kaiju Killer?
Yeah, it's always hard to tell because it's, of course, you probably do the same thing where you might start something that maybe is elaborate and you jump onto another job for a little while, then you jump back on it. And particularly with something that large, I take on other jobs and I might be on my computer for a day and then I'm away from it. I would guesstimate that it was probably about a month and a half, perhaps 2 months full time.
That's awesome. People don't really understand how long that kind of stuff takes and how that piece is so intricate, but it's also so huge. So it's like you're going over that so many times and there's so much surface area. It's incredible. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And surface area is the key word because I've done smaller sculpts. I actually just finished some smaller kind of 7-inch sculpts, and they were so detailed. They still took me a long time because I wear the magnifiers while I'm doing it and everything, and you're still trying to get all that detail in that I would probably be sculpting into a larger size figure, only at a smaller scale.
Oh, yeah.
And they took me about a month and a half for one of those. So I might say it might be easier for me to do some of these larger pieces because I can really see what I'm doing. Maybe it's my eyesight's just going.
I have a painter friend who does the same. He needs to paint like 6 feet by 15 feet. Like that's just when he goes to a small canvas, he just can't do it. It bugs him because like a little brushstroke changes the entire thing. Whereas you're on a big one and you're like, you have space to play and move around, and yeah, it makes a big difference. And when you're trying to get it in that tiny, like when you have to put magnifying glasses on, it's like, oh, it's the worst.
It is. You take your goggles off, you're walking around the house and you're like floating in the air because it seems like you're in another dimension. You're so used to looking through these things. But I guess I'd have to say I'm always been a fan of variety. So I like working on small things and big things, kind of jumping back and forth. But there's something about, I guess, when you got a finished toy and it's like you can hold it in your hands and there was a point where King Corpse was as big as my grandson, so
wow.
There's something cool about that, holding that thing that's so big. I was a big fan of Inhumanoids from Hasbro back in the day, and I loved it because of the size, so I think that's been haunting me all these years, and I keep wanting to make things that size because Inhumanoids was so cool when I was younger.
Well, that's what's great about this trend that's going on right now in the mainstream toys is everybody's making those giant versions of things.
Yeah.
It almost seems like because we're bigger, our toys have to be bigger to make us feel like we did when we were little.
Oh,
you're little, your toy is big to you.
Yeah,
I thought about that.
It makes sense.
It's just a strange thing that the industry is doing with these giant toys. I love it. I love the giant toys. So.
Oh, I believe me. I hope somebody someday wants to do I know a lot of the companies that do them, and they do them when someone commissions them to make one of them because they're so costly. But I know Outer Spacemen at 5 Points had that giant Colossus.
Oh yeah,
I love that stuff. And I think it's okay for me to mention this, but I think Chris Reiniak now he's having a large size figure made of one of his little kaiju characters for a client, and I can't wait to see that. I mean, one of his pieces done 4 or 5 feet tall.
Wow.
Yeah, that would be incredible.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
I'm freaking out. I wish I was the person getting that.
So, what is your sculpting medium? What are you working in?
It's funny. I talk to a lot of toy sculptors. I mean, when I say toy sculptors, like I'm talking guys that do work for Hasbro and everything. They're all digital these days, but I still love Sculpey and Supersculpey actually.
You're doing that? You did that in Supersculpey?
Yeah.
Oh God, that's insane. Supersculpey needs to hire you as their spokesmodel. The hardest stuff to work in.
Yeah, I have a mixture. I actually mix parts Supersculpey to Sculpey 3 and sometimes Pro Mat. It's mostly to get a color, but I've found that I like the consistency of it. But it's years and years of working with it. I think I've found there's lots of downsides to Sculpey, but I've found to make the most of the upsides of it. And I remember at one point, I don't know, George, if you've ever heard of a guy, Rudy Vapp. He had a company in Cincinnati, and he was the head of sculpting at Kenner Toys back in the day, long time ago. And then he started his own company, and I got to be friends with him because he did a lot of the Mad Balls and some of the toys for American Greetings. And he was an old school toy sculptor. He did the Kenner Alien, actually.
Oh, wow.
But I was talking to him one time, and I go, man, I really need to learn how to use wax. And I see you guys working in wax. And he was like an old biker dude. He takes a drag out of his cigarette, and he goes, you sculpt in whatever works. It doesn't really matter. He goes, whatever looks good, we'll make a mold of it, and we'll make the toy. He goes, don't go relearn something. And that stuck with me. And like, if I can make it look good and I can cast one up and make a proto and make production pieces, then why relearn it?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, if you can get that level of quality out of Supersculpey, why would you switch to something different and have to learn how to work that material to that finish? So it's like, yeah, it doesn't make any sense to try and relearn a new material.
Yeah, it's almost like as a sculptor, you might want to try materials that might be easier to use, or Sculpey's not easy to fix. If you're getting corrections from a licensee or something and you have to fix something and tear it apart after you baked it, that gets to be like a problem, but it's still doable. And I think wax, that's where wax has kind of an advantage of a little bit easier to fix things.
Oh yeah, melt it down and build it back up.
Yep, exactly. And then also handling it, in your hand while it's hard and you don't have to worry about messing up your detail. That's why most of my big things, it's on an armature and I never lift it. You know, it's all sitting on a table and I'm spinning it, trying to get under the armpits and all that other stuff.
That's actually one of the reasons I don't use Sculpey or like a Chevron type clay very often, or mostly never, because when I'm holding it, it melts. My hands run hot, especially when I'm working like that, and I just end up melting. If I'm working on something, I end up melting the back as I work on the front, or vice versa. So it's like I had to go to a clay or like a castelline or a wax just for that reason.
Yes, especially if you're doing any kind of like, I like to put little minute details in there, and that's the first thing to go when you're handling it.
Yeah. I mean, even the wax, my hands will start melting off those little details. You got to finish them at the end and then try not to touch it too much.
And I used Castelline for a while. I did some Care Bear stuff with Castelline, and I did, trying to think if I did any of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I might have in Castelline, and I kind of liked it. George, you worked at McFarlane for a while, didn't you?
Yeah. That's where I first used Castelline.
Yeah, that's where I was using it, and I actually talked to them at one time about coming in. They wanted me to come and live in a house with a bunch of other artists for a while to try me out. I didn't want to do that. But I know they were interested because Castelline and Castelline for them, they were able to pass it off to anybody in the studio and fix my sculpts or add to it or whatever. But I did like that material, but I did have trouble getting really, really fine detail in it.
For us non-nerds, what the heck is Castelline? What am I saying that right? Castelline?
Yeah, it was kind of a material of choice for a while. And George, you might know more about it than I do.
It was like a proprietary blend that it was like this guy somehow invented it, and he was the sole maker of this stuff. And then when he passed away, his wife took over and she was making it. And it was you could only buy it from like this one place in New York. It's basically like if you mixed a clay with wax, so that at room temperature it's kind of like a rock. It's very hard, but all you need to do is put it under like a heat lamp, or you can microwave it, like microwave a bowl of it to get it like real liquid if you wanted to pour it in a mold to pour up stuff. But basically you just keep it under a heat lamp and you can work with it. It gets super soft, and you can work it like clay. But then at room temperature it turns back hard.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think it was probably McFarlane that made it so popular for a while.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they used it pretty much. That's all they used was that for a long time.
Yeah.
It sounds similar. I don't know the name because but there's a clay that Chris Roniak uses that I know he can melt down and reuse.
Yeah, Monster Clay.
Yeah, it's similar, right?
It's very different. Monster Clay is like overly waxy, as in not like a wax material, but like it's almost got like a slickness to it, and it's really soft. I think even their hard is really soft. There's a material out now called CX5 that's kind of similar to Castelline in a little bit of a way, but a little more like wax, like a little more like sculpting wax. But that's kind of the closest now.
Yeah, I got that a couple of years ago from Complete Sculptor. I think it was at San Diego Comic-Con or New York. And I haven't used it yet.
It's got a bit of a stickiness to it on some of it, and I think he may have changed the recipe a little bit. I got my original batch of it through Kickstarter. He had funded it through to kind of make bigger production versions of it. Adam Bean is the guy's name, I believe. And he was a real nice guy. I met him out here when he was at like Monsterpalooza pitching the clay and everything. And it's a cool clay. I like it. I mean, he's really good at it. Like, so the stuff he makes, is beautiful. But it's, again, whatever your material is kind of thing.
Yep, exactly. We're probably getting way too technical at sculpting.
George isn't wrong, though, James, in the fact that Supersculpey should license stuff from you. I've seen them, Mab Graves gets mechanical pencils licensed under her name and paintbrushes under her name. Like, they could totally license, a Supersculpey brand under a James Groman or a Seriously Silly K, and gets like an artist connected to the stuff. Because like when I think of Supersculpey, I almost think of like beginner entry levels. What's that?
You think of crafting.
I think of crafting. I think of entry level. I can find it at Michael's. But if I looked at that packaging and I saw a Rotten Rex or a King Corpse or the stuff that Seriously Silly K does, I'd be like, holy shit, this isn't just for beginners. This is what many professionals are actually using. And I think that would kind of help elevate and take away that brass stigma that Supersculpey has.
Yeah, definitely. And I got into Supersculpey because of the garage kit deal. I was doing garage kits back in Teresa. I don't know if you're familiar with garage kits, but they were people would do sculptures of movie characters and stuff, and they'd make rubber molds, and they would cast them up in parts and sell them as like a kind of a pseudo model kit in resin.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of those like classic garage kit sculptors where I kind of learned my craft, they were, the stuff they did it with it blew me away. I'm like, how do you do that? Just the way they would get it to look, refine these sculpts to look like ceramic, like glass. They were just perfect. A funny little fact is with Supersculpey is the box that they sell Supersculpey in had a little Viking on it for a long, long time. I don't know if they still use that box. It's got a sticker and it's got a couple sculptures on it. But there's a Viking that is one of the sculpts on the packaging. That's one of the guys I learned sculpting from. He's still a really good friend of mine. And when Sculpey first came out, he did a sculpt at American Greetings with that stuff. And he did this little Viking. He sent it to Sculpey and he said, hey, look what I did with your material. And he said, hey, can we use that on our packaging? And been on there ever since. And he actually sculpted a couple of the Madballs too. But I used to sit and watch him when I was a young guy at American Greetings. I just sit and watch him sculpt. And it really got me started. It really helped me kind of get over my fear of doing it.
Yeah, they need to do more of that.
Yeah,
Never
the
seen a picture of Sculpey.
Well,
Yeah.
the Sculpey I've seen has like a little seahorse or something on it. I don't think I've seen the Viking one, but I was going to ask, I've done like, I don't know, 3 customs just for kicks on the side, and I always thought Supersculpey was what I should use. Do you all feel like that is the best material for people to start out with, or is there something else you all would recommend?
I might say it's probably the best to start with. I don't think wax would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the easiest to start with the least amount of buy-in around it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
like, you just have to buy Sculpey and you're ready to go. You don't really need maybe a simple, wooden tool here or there, like to do some refinement and line work and stuff. But like if you want to get into wax, you have to buy a waxer. You have to, you're gonna need to make your wax, or you have to buy the wax. So you might need a melting pot and all the material to make the wax.
Bit
But
more.
you at least need a waxer, which is at least $100 plus all the extra tips and stuff. So,
And when it comes to sculpting, it's like a lot of times I have 4 tools. I actually have like 100 tools, but I have 4 that I use all the time.
the same.
I think most sculptors are like that. So it's not like you got to go out and get this arsenal of tools. You can, you get a couple that you feel comfortable with, and you can get the effects you want. And I think that's something that people don't realize either. Is like you find the right tool, you can do almost anything with it.
And the 4 tools I have that I use, I made. So you don't even need to go and buy a bunch of tools.
Yep.
Huh.
You will need to post or share pictures of your 4 tools of choice, because I'm honestly curious. Because when you go into like a Michael's, because that is a pretty common place to go pick up starting stuff, a lot of times the toolkits they have are like plastic, and I've heard some people make their own. I've heard some people go buy dentist tools because they're metal and better, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, what do I need? I've heard people, they'll take a sewing needle and put it on a cork, and like that's a really tiny thing they can use. I mean, it would be helpful to see what you all use as just a perspective for people like
I
me.
have the sewing needle tool. I do use that.
Really?
Yeah.
See? I mean, I've heard all sorts of stuff, but you all should totally post, because I'm just curious what your of your arsenal, what your 4 favorites are.
I really hate to be the buzzkill, but there's so much more I want to talk to Jim about.
Oh, yes. I'm a sculpting geek when it comes to that.
I know you guys can probably talk about this stuff for hours and process and all that, but the sculptors listening are probably just flipping off the speakers right now and cussing us out for wanting to move on, but we really do. We got so much more that we want to talk to Jim about, so let's take a brief moment to talk about our sponsors, and then we'll get back to talking to Jim about something else. So Lucas, do you like toys?
Yeah.
So do I. And my office has tons of toys in it, doesn't it? And do you know where I get those toys?
From your friends and stores, and you make them.
True, but I also get some from our sponsors. And do you know who our sponsors are?
Strange cat toys, and 3D retro.
That's right. And if you go to Strange Cat Toys, be sure to load up that cart and use our promo code Marsham at checkout, and you'll receive 10% off your entire order. And so, Lucas, what is Daddy always looking at when he looks at his phone?
Toys.
And where do I see all these great toys?
Social media.
That's right. For all the latest and greatest designer toy news, be sure to like and follow
SpankySpoke.com.
Close. Try one more time.
SpankyStokes.com.
Perfect. And who else?
And the Toy Chronicle. .com.
Good job. And be sure to download the Toy Chronicles app at any one of your favorite app stores. Thanks, Lucas.
Thanks, Lucas.
No, say you're welcome.
Welcome.
Okay, so Jim, you just got back from Taipei Toy Fest, but you also did another convention in Asia within the last year. Was it Beijing Toy Show?
I was in Thailand last year.
Oh, right, that's the one I was... Okay, so yeah, let's switch to talking about conventions. You just got back from Taipei Toy Festival, and then you did Thailand, and here in the States, you usually do Designer Con and 5 Points Fest. So I'm curious, from your experience and your point of view, what for you has been like the biggest difference between doing the conventions here in the States versus the ones you've done overseas?
I'm trying to think of the main differences. I think it's mostly the stampedes at the beginning of the show. I guess that does happen. It did happen at 5 Points, didn't it? But no, I don't know if there's like a real big difference other than in Taipei. I don't know for sure, but I feel like there was almost like, sometimes you can go to some trade shows and there's restrictions on what your booth has to look like. I think everything looked very tied together. Everybody was using these kind of like modular systems with glass shelves and everything, kind of what Instinctoy normally does. So everything really was cohesive and clean looking and very professional looking. And, I even sit at conventions with a table and a tablecloth,
Right.
But you didn't see that here. They were really nicely printed, lit signs. So I guess it almost was like I would see this being a step toward what actual toy fair in New York, as opposed to a collector's toy convention that I'm used to.
Yeah.
I mean, from what I could see, Jim, TTF was massive, way beyond anything we see here over in the U.S. I mean, do you get that impression too? I know you're not really standing in the lines per se. You're kind of at the booth, but does it seem like it's just constant people? Yes,
I'd say crowd-wise, it was pretty packed. It wasn't, as far as like floor space, it's not decon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there were two buildings, but it wasn't it wasn't the size of like the last decon, which seemed to go on forever and ever. Mm-hmm. So I think as people see photos of the crowds that showed up at the show, and I think that gives the impression that it's a gigantic space, but I don't want to belittle it because it was a nice size, two buildings full of toys and galleries and stuff like that. But if you're thinking something bigger than decon, it's not.
Interesting.
Okay,
yeah.
So you're probably seeing like maybe the same attendance, but in a smaller space. Because we saw videos from Instinctoy and some other people on the social media sites, and it looked crazy. It looked like chaotic and tons of crowds and humongous queue lines seemed to be everywhere, especially for Instinctoy, where it seemed to go on for blocks and then wrap around the building and stuff. So, I mean, those lines, were they just for like the very popular flip bait type booths, or was this in the morning where things were really crazy? Were the lines like that all day, or did it ever slow down like midday? Was it just more of a chill atmosphere?
I was kind of manning our Instinct had two booths. One was they were at separate areas in the convention, so I was at the one that had a setup with. They had a really nice gallery space with a bunch of King corpses and other work that I've done, and then I had a signing area, and I didn't leave that area too much. I walked around a couple times, but what I saw, it looked like at the first thing in the morning, big huge lines formed, and they would take a few hours to actually kind of whittle down. And then at specific times during the day, obviously they had already pre-scheduled when something might be going up. I know King Corpse, there were a few, probably 4 to 6 different lotteries that were held for the exclusive banana chocolate King Corpses that we had at the show. So there were a few different times people would line up to get in that lottery. And I think some of the other booths kind of handled it the same way. So yeah, during the course of the day, all of a sudden you see a big, huge line form in front of your booth that would last for about 2 hours.
Wow.
And then it would happen somewhere else.
Okay. And it sounds okay. That's not what it sounds like when I was watching the videos. The lines for Punk Drunkers and Instinctoy were so massive and so long. They just really all they did was just block all the other booths, and it just looked like every single booth was extremely busy. But it's probably not the case at all. I'm sure there was plenty of booths where you could walk up and see their toys in the glass without standing in lines and make a purchase and walk away with something relatively quickly.
From what I saw, there were plenty that you could just walk up and purchase.
Okay.
But you have the big boys, some of the big boys that, Instinct Toys he gets swamped. Their booth just gets swamped so much that he does the lotteries just to keep things going for the week.
Yeah.
4 days. King Corpse was gone in the first 2 days, and they were at the beginning of the show. They're piled firewood in the on shelves, and then they're gone, and it looks like you sold everything. And people, I could see people walking by thinking that you didn't have anything left. But no, I think that some of the booths are easier to get stuff than others, and of course it's because of popularity of certain items and certain companies. But I think there were plenty of people you could walk up and actually purchase something from, and not have to be in a lottery and not have to be in a huge line.
Okay.
Makes me feel better, Gary.
There was an Astro Boy I wanted, and it's I hate carrying things home in my luggage. Usually if I see something, I say, you know what, I'm going to try to get that later. But there was a little Astro Boy I wanted really bad, and of course it's gone. It's already sold out. But where I could walk right up and I had a choice of almost any other item that they had except for the one that I wanted.
Oh man, heartbreak.
I'll get one. I'll hunt it down. I'm an Astro Boy fan, so.
You do make me feel a little better about going out to a Taipei Toy Fest or a Beijing Toy Show where, in the videos all we see is the chaos and the lines and the queuing. And it just looks like you're probably never going to be able to get what you want. But now, talking to you, you make me feel like, I could probably go over there. Maybe not get everything I want, but I could still come away with some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. The only other thing I would say to that is the cool thing that I kind of noticed when I did get a chance to walk around is, of course, you always have new people. There's always new companies or new artists that you haven't seen before that maybe haven't built up popularity, and you can get at them and you can get their stuff. And you might be, you're buying something not because everyone else wants it and it's popular and you got to fight a crowd, but you buy it because you see it and it's really cute and I want it. I don't care if it's a big name artist or whatever. And I saw some of that, would see a piece and I had never heard of the person before. I had never seen it before. And I go, it's really cute. And I could see that there's a market for that, and eventually that person might make a name for themselves. So that's something to keep in mind too, is people that are just getting started that haven't built up a name yet, but still do quality work. It gives you a chance to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point because there's so many exceptional artists in this industry that are looking to break through or just on the brink with great designs, great toys, great design sense. It doesn't always have to be a big name artist or a big name company that's going to catch your eye. So, that's absolutely true. And I was IMing with Dadadub when he was at the convention, and he was just telling me, everyone is there. It's just a great place to, meet new people and all the industry people that, I guess, on that side of the world. And it just sounds like a great place just to network and hang out and just meet new friends and all that stuff. But I was telling Don that you were going to be coming on, and one of the questions he wanted to know was, what were your impressions of the toys that you saw on hand at the Taipei Toy Fest? I guess overall.
Did you feel like you saw a variety of styles and a variety of price points? And
yes, because I was trying to think of how to actually put it into words, and I think that probably the best way to put it would be variety, and also like Teresa, you and I, our tastes probably are radically different. Me, of course, I'm going to see monsters and creatures. And I saw one guy was doing H.P. Lovecraft little figures, and those things were so cool. And it's not necessarily, what everyone's going to like, but it was a nice mix of really super sweet, cute stuff and monster stuff. And there was even a guy that did super realistic, like demonic looking large sculptures that I thought was really cool. And then they had some gallery set up. They're right in the middle of the show. They'd have an actual space set up like a gallery with artwork and prints and one of a kinds. Like you're actually walking into a gallery and walking and looking at fine art. That was really cool. My impression of the toys, though, it was a great variety of stuff.
Cool. Now I know a lot of times when the artists go over to these conventions, they don't actually get to experience the country very much. They're mainly indoors doing the convention, and they usually fly home like the next day. So I know this time around you were definitely working a lot at the Instinctoy booth. I saw you doing a lot of sketches and a lot extremely detailed sketches and a lot of signings and stuff like that. You mentioned you didn't get a whole lot of time to walk around. So did you get to experience Taipei at all?
I did. The last day before I got to my plane, of course, they had gotten an interpreter for me for the show. They had hired out, there's a young lady that actually she works for promotional companies and does rock and roll concerts and movie premieres. And so she's a promotional person that actually speaks 4 languages. And her name was Katrina Lin. And I met her the first day she came in. Man, smart, funny, she was so fun to hang out with. And she spoke 4 languages. So everyone that came up to the table or to talk to me, she could translate back to them and translate for me. I don't think she was aware of the scene. She didn't really know what she was getting into, but she threw herself into it. She was on the other side of the table, like selling things. She was awesome. But she and another gentleman, Vincent Seo, he works for Instinctoys when they come to Taiwan. The 2 of them took me out the last day and took me to some little diners and to Taipei Temple Plaza. It's kind of a shrine to their first king, and a big, huge space, just beautiful structures. And I got to walk around there a little bit, but just hang out with them. They were wonderful people. So I did get to see a little bit, but I wish I would have built in a little bit more time to see the sights, because it's a beautiful city and the people are amazing. They're just giving and kind and friendly. And so I did. I got to hang out that last day, and I'm glad I did. It was also a 4-day show, so it's kind of like to build an extra time. All of a sudden, you're talking about being in overseas for a length of time, but might have been detrimental to me getting some work done back home. So
you deserve a vacation, though, Jim.
This was kind of, and I was sitting by a table talking to people and doing drawings at my leisure, so it was not stressful. I had a lot of fun. Okay. So in a way, it was kind of a vacation away from my basement studio.
I want to interview Katrina Lin, figure out what she thought about the whole designer toy scene, what was going on there.
Oh, that would be hilarious, because she came in cold. She, like I said, she usually does different types of events, and she had some space in her schedule, and they said, "You want to do this toy show?" Oh, sure.
That's awesome. I did see something bad that seemed to happen at Taipei Toy Fest, and this is something I saw on Hiroto's Instagram feed. I think it was earlier today, actually, and he had mentioned that he received all these nice, kind gifts from artists and other companies, and I guess somehow they were stored at the Instinctoy booth somewhere, and someone ended up stealing them. That's terrible.
I guess. Yeah, my wife actually saw it on Facebook that it was posted, and I didn't know about it until, I think, this morning. That was pretty awful. I don't know the particulars, other than the first question I asked was it the booth that I was in? Afraid that maybe, we weren't watching things too closely, but it was the other booth. And I don't know what really happened, but yeah, it was mostly some really nice gifts, I think.
Right.
That Hiroto had gotten from fans, because it's all about gift giving. When you like somebody and you've made a connection, that's kind of a tradition, is to give a gift. And it's too bad. All these wonderful people I met, it just was a reminder that, there's always some bad eggs wandering through the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unfortunate that, these things happen. It's not the first time it's happened. It's not going to be the last either. But to think that they were gifts and things that probably meant a lot to Hiroto to receive, and that was the stuff that was taken, that's a little heartbreaking.
Yep, absolutely. And Hiroto's an awesome gentleman, and you hate to see that happen. I'm sure he had some employees that probably felt pretty bad about it. Hopefully, maybe it was misplaced. I keep hoping for the best, that something's going to come to light that, maybe they'll get returned. I don't know.
Yeah, you never know. But I heard Instinctoy's not doing DesignerCon this year. Is that true?
No, they're not. They're sponsoring another show in Tokyo. He's starting to sponsor shows for acquaintances and friends, and it just fell too close.
But you're going to be there, yeah?
Bummer.
Yeah, I'll be there for sure. And got my table all set up, and we were hoping to have Kaiju Killers there, but unfortunately, my paint master broke the factory.
that doesn't surprise me. I mean, that thing was gorgeous and beautiful, but I can't imagine it'd be easy to replicate.
Yeah, we might be pulling back on some things, but Hiroto did not sound like he was going to. He was trying to get it all, and he said that it's just going to be very time consuming. It's also the parts. It comes with multiple parts, and it's just going to take a while, a little bit longer than we expected to produce it. And, King Corpse came out in record time. When you think like Rotten Rex took 3 years to come out, and King Corpse was 6 months or something like that. So I think the plan right now is 5 points next year.
Next year. Wow.
I know.
Can you even guess what you think the retail is going to be?
I knew it to begin with, but I was told by instinct that it will be pricier than King Corpse, of course.
Yeah, has to be, sure.
I have no estimation, really, other than I'm thinking like 500, perhaps.
George, can you afford that, George?
I cannot, but I will go back and look at that picture on Instagram all the time because it is freaking incredible.
Well, but there's always different variations made, right? So I know for King Corpse, at least, they made like the more heavily painted, more expensive, but then they've done some of the releases where it's more of a single color, just a few colors, and not fully painted. It's a little bit more affordable, right? Is there a plan to do the same thing with Kaiju Killer?
Definitely. And there are a lot of people, I get emails and messages all the time about people that are, angry they can't find King Corpses. And I get less and less now because there's been a number of releases and it's showing no signs of slowing down. It's still somewhat hard to get for some people, but it's getting easier to get. And I think Kaiju Killer is going to go through that same curve where it's going to be really tough at first. And then it's just, these things just take so long to manufacture. Even when you get the molds done and they're done and ready to go, it takes a long time to just make one.
Yeah.
No, I can't even imagine. We all looked at that paintmaster and we're like, we just don't even know. It's just insane what you do. And I know we're going to get probably into some questions around process and stuff and all of that. But I'm kind of curious, when it comes to the different colorways and releases, how involved have you been? So are you a part of those decisions, or once you kind of do the sculpt and the original design, is that on Instinctoy to come up with all these different variations?
We had a contract when we first started working together, and the contract stated that I retain the rights to the character, that I own King Corpse. Whenever I create characters like this, Kaiju Killer, I own the character. And they're great. They're like, hey, we're thinking about doing, was it a mint chocolate chip? And I'm like, wow, that's great. Yeah, sure. I approve everything, but it's not always my idea of what to do.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. But you get to kind of decide and sign off.
I can't remember ever saying no to anything, because I trust he knows the business. The banana one was my idea too. I was like, wow, this mint chocolate chip's so cool. We should do a banana one because he's a gorilla, So the banana one was one that I kind of threw their way. So yeah, it's still very collaborative. He's not just going to release something without me ever seeing it. He's very good about us both agreeing that this is the right move.
Nice. God, that's a perfect relationship. That's exactly how it should be. I'm wondering, are you currently developing a bunch, like you're just going to expand this universe, I assume. So there's probably 5 or 6 more characters and many more years of work ahead and releases ahead, yeah?
Yeah, he wants to do as many things per year as we can, and the big pieces take a long time to sculpt. But yeah. I have been starting to farm. I've been doing drawings and starting to farm out sculpts to other artists because I can get more done that way. Even though I'm thinking I might start cutting back on that because it's one thing to do like, oh, I want to do 20 projects a year. Every project comes in, you take it on, but it gets to be too much, so I'm starting to whittle back a little bit. Maybe I won't be, hiring out sculptors anymore. Just take on things that I can actually do myself, because I don't want to just keep pooping stuff out. I want to make sure that it's good stuff and it's well thought out and there's a reason for it being. But yeah, we have a new project that we teased at Taipei Toy Festival. We had a poster made up with like kind of a silhouette of the next piece, because the sculpture's done and it's in process right now. I got permission to talk a little bit about that if you guys want to.
Hell yeah. Bring it on.
Well, yeah.
I'm not gonna turn that offer down.
No, I don't want to hear it. No, let's just wait.
This is fun, guys.
No, talk about it. So what are we talking about here? Is it the killer of Kaiju Killer? What is it?
Oh, that's a great idea. Let me write that down. Kaiju Killer.
There you go.
No, but it's actually like a large size kind of creature that it's almost like a Frankenstein creature that's stitched together from different parts. Okay. And it will stand about the size of Rotten Rex, but has an extendable neck that will bring him up to about 25 inches.
Whoa, that's cool. That's cool.
What? Like a dinosaur or a giraffe? Kind of?
Yeah, you might be able to find photos online of the teaser poster. Probably explains it as much as I probably should. But yeah, it's kind of like a dinosaur dragon type creature. There's a number of different concepts playing around within the design, and it's going to come with some small accessory figures and stuff like that. So it's raising the bar once again, and it wasn't just me. It was Hiroto's he's a nut. He said, it's like, I want to do this, and I want to do this, and he just wants to keep raising the bar. So wow. It's going to be big.
God, that's cool.
Now, did you sculpt this one, or was this one that was farmed out?
It was farmed out because of another big project that came in, and I actually I'm doing some drawings and stuff for some other projects. I just couldn't take on the sculpt. And I farmed it out to Joe Lachise, and he's on Instagram as Dope Pope, and he does.
Oh yes, I'm familiar.
Yeah, I think I might have mentioned it last time I was on.
Yeah,
but I become friends with him, and he did the sculpt, and he's real good. He does stuff for X Plus, Godzilla stuff and everything. But he did the sculpt, and it turned out beautiful, and it's going to be amazing. And I love the fact that he was taking my drawings and. We were going back and forth, and he did a really great literal interpretation of what I gave him, and so I'm very happy with it. It's just I feel like from here on in, I probably should be doing the sculpting myself, just because it's more of a complete bill of goods. It's almost like I designed it, I sculpted it, right, and helped produce it. I think works pretty well for a lot of people, but that's not to take anything away from Joe's sculpt. Man, it is amazing. He did a amazing job on it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, continuity wise, I mean, I assume that's sort of a thing within sculpting too. Like, if the original person doing the artwork or the sculpting, it all kind of looks like it came from the same person. And I imagine, even though you're farming out, even though they're trying as hard as they can to kind of replicate and match what you did, I imagine are some little idiosyncrasies that maybe people would be able to pick up on or know.
Yeah, in fact, that was mentioned even from Hiroto as he's looking at it. Can we refine this? Can we refine that? It doesn't look like your detail. And we did. We went back and forth to make sure it matched up a little bit tighter. But I think he did a really great job of kind of aping, if I do have a style of sculpting, he did a good job of aping it.
Yeah, and that guy's an amazing sculptor too, so I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always wonder from a collector standpoint how many are more purist, I guess, and if this would rub them the wrong way, like, oh, he didn't actually put his hands on this in the beginning, kind of a thing. Obviously, it's still your idea in your universe, but I wonder how many people out there would be bothered by that.
Yeah, I guess it is a question. I don't think, because I have some other projects coming up where I did not sculpt them. I totally designed them. I mean, BC Blasters was sculpted by another gentleman. I did really tight schematics. I always do super tight schematics like I used to do for Hasbro when I collaborate with a sculptor. So they're totally designed by me, but And there's something to be said for a guy that, I mean, I used to have to do it. I'd get a drawing of, a character and have to match up to it. That is not easy. It's easier to sit down and just sculpt my own idea. Yeah. But to match someone else's drawing, that's skill.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, major props to anyone, honestly, to what you do, George, what you do, anyone out there, because I couldn't even imagine. I have a hard enough time taking stuff from my brain and trying to do stuff with it, let alone trying to understand what other people are thinking in theirs. So, but yeah, I'm just curious. And I'm looking, so on your Instagram, Jim, there's a picture you posted of you posing in front of a Taipei Toy Festival banner. Yeah. So, and it shows Kaiju Killer, I believe Rotten Rex, and then 2 newer kind of characters. So is that giving us a glimpse into future stuff?
No, that's actually, I was going to be the guest artist, or one of the guest artists. There's a number of great artists there. I was kind of the featured artist, so they wanted me to do the poster this year. So that's a poster for Kaiju Killer, thinking that we were going to release it at this show. So those are just monsters I made up, that he's a Kaiju Killer, so I had to have some Kaiju in the poster. So, yeah, that's a good question. I wonder if that confused anyone else. That's just to show he's getting ready to womp on these guys.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to ask, because you were talking about the guy with his extendable neck, so I'm like looking at this thinking, well, it could be maybe that, but...
Speaking of that, though, I've been seeing that DesignerCon's been having several different banners made by different artists, and they're popping up around the LA area and stuff. Like, next year, I don't know if you did one for this year, maybe it hasn't been revealed yet, but next year, I mean, definitely Ben or whoever, like, I would love to see a giant Kaiju Killer or Instinctoy-based DesignerCon billboard hanging over LA. That'd be awesome.
Man, I'd love to see it too. If it was not contacted this year.
Not this year, okay.
But I'll throw this out there because I asked the company if it's okay if I can mention it, but I can mention it, but I can't. But I do have something that's going to be revealed at DCon that's really big. It's one of the bigger things I've worked on. It's one of the more fun and one of the bigger projects I've worked on in my career.
Cool.
And it's going to be revealed at DCon, and I think that's all I can say. It's for a totally different company than anyone I've worked for in the past. So.
Oh, interesting.
Love that tease.
Is it a company that we're familiar with, or is this a new and upcoming company?
No, it's a company you're very familiar with. So.
Very.
Or say no more.
He said enough. Can say no more.
Yeah.
Well, I have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because folks from that company are probably listening. They will be listening to this, I'm sure.
Oh.
So
I just want to say now that we love that company, and whatever it is, we would love to get a sample to review. love that company.
And I think they go for that. So we can arrange it. Wink, wink. Say no more. Wink, wink.
Now, Jim, we mentioned that you started off doing mainstream. You had a full-time gig at American Greetings, and then you branched out and did freelance for a bunch of different companies. And now you're dabbling in the designer toy world, and you're getting to do actually designs and concepts of your own stuff. But how much of that work is actually full-time now? Like, how much work do you have that's designer toy related now?
It's gone from probably 80% was work for hire for large toy companies, and the rest was just the vinyl toys. Now it's like a majority of it is, working with Instinct and doing more collector's toys. But I still do. I get more selective now with the larger companies. I take on projects that I think I'm right for rather than just everything. And I take on projects that are really interesting. And so I might say 35%. Kid Robot, I do all the Madball stuff for Kid Robot. I do their packaging and I do the designs for all their new figures. We got probably about 50, 60 new Madballs I've done that haven't even been shown yet.
Holy crap. It's a lot.
And then I just recently I worked with MGA Entertainment in California. I can't remember what city they're in, but they're actually they bought Little Tykes here in Cleveland. Little Tykes does all little slobber toys for the younger age kids. But I did a line of figures called Crate Creatures that are little monsters inside of crates. You pull on their tongue and the whole little crate that they come in vibrates and they growl and their eyes blink. And I did a whole series of those working with their designers on the characters and refining the concept and stuff. And those are out in stores right now. And that was fun. I mean, it was basically designing a whole crap load of little monsters.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds familiar. I think I have seen that in the stores.
Yeah, it was in the top 10 toys last year of sales.
Oh.
It did really well.
Wow.
Kingdom Builders is another one I did with them. It's like little action figures that you get a knight in armor and you could change him into a tool, like a screwdriver or a hammer, and you can build play sets with them.
That sounds cool.
That was really fun. So, like I said, I take on things for larger toy companies when it's a really interesting, fun project that I feel like, it's maybe a challenge of some kind. And the tool, Kingdom Builders, was an awesome challenge because some of the characters, I was the first one to figure out how they went from figure to tool. And they were handed to an engineer afterwards. So I'm kind of like, when they asked me to do it, I said, man, you need an engineer on this. And they said, well, take your best shot. I kind of figured it out, and then their engineers made them work. So that was fun and challenging. So,
wow.
So okay, and you may have talked about this last time you were on, but I'm trying to understand this. So you are freelance in the sense that you don't work for any specific company. They just know you exist and reach out and say, hey, do you want to sculpt this for us?
yes, and I don't do a lot of sculpting for toy companies anymore. I do mostly concept work. It's mostly drawings, and sculpting for toy companies can be tedious, and I guess I've gotten to a point where I want to do my own stuff, and I don't. It's so time consuming to do a sculpt and to follow, the specs or a licensed character that it doesn't interest me that much anymore. I prefer to do my own stuff. That's where I want to focus. But I don't mind doing the concepts and the drawings. I can get those done a little bit quicker, and they're more fun because they're so spontaneous. So I do more drawings and stuff for companies, but it's like I totally have my own studio. I've been doing it 35 years, so for the most part, I've got a lot of contacts. I worked at Hasbro for a while, so I still know people there and people that have left there and gone to other companies and still use me. So yeah, it's one of the benefits of doing it as long as I have, is I've made a lot of friends and contacts that give me work.
Okay. So say there's someone out there who's really into sculpting, but is not with a big company or people don't know that they're out there. Do you feel like in order to get to the level you're at, you need to get in with a certain company like an American Greetings or a Hasbro, what have you, and be working at a company specifically for a bit to get your name out there?
Yeah, actually, I also teach school here in Cleveland at Cleveland Institute of Art. I teach a class on character design and stuff, and that's what I tell my students is there's always that designer that is in the right place at the right time, right out of school, and all of a sudden is discovered, and it does happen. But I actually think that's what made my career, is that I got hired right out of school, American Greetings, and it was like boot camp, turned me into the designer I was, and I walked out and had work because I learned, because I had to show up on time. I had to show my stuff to a ton of different art directors and had to take my lumps when I needed to. And it taught me how to handle myself as a working artist. And I think it is best for a lot of people that are just getting started out. That's probably the best route, is to work for a company you don't have to work for them forever. It's go in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. Sometimes you can end up being very happy, and maybe you might stay if it's a company that treats you well. But yeah, I think it's a good question, Teresa, because it's something I tell my students all the time, is sometimes that's a good way to start. You start at a company, learn the ropes, and then take that knowledge and start your own business.
Yeah. I think sometimes with the world of social media today, people think, I'll just someone will find me, I'll go viral. But there's so many people out there probably thinking that, right? And it can happen.
It does. But not as often as people are led to believe.
Right.
Taipei, what I really love is I was sitting at the table, and while I'm drawing, you can usually tell when someone walks up to the table and they're watching you, you can tell they're an artist. And I always go, hey, do you draw? And then they'll either say no, but most of the time you can, like I said, you can tell if they're an artist just by the way they watch you. And there was a young lady that came up, and I started talking to her, and she was from the States, or was originally from Taiwan, but she was going to school in California, and she was with her mom. I started to talk to her. She was a student, and she had this awesome little character in her hand. It was a 3D print of a character, and I go, oh, who's doing that? And she said, I'm a student, and I did this 3D print. And I took it from her, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, it was so cool. It looked like a cross between like an owl and a lion. And it was really cute. And I started to talk to her and her mom about what she should do. I go, the best thing you could have done is walk through the show with that thing in your hand. I go, and even walk up to somebody and don't be afraid to show it to them. Because I probably got more work by pressing the flesh and meeting people than really, I've gotten work by cold calling people and people finding my website. But the best jobs come from me just being in the right place and pushing myself. So I told her just to go around and meet people and show your work around. And that's how, she's right out of school, and I could see someone at that show going, wow, I'll produce that. And all of a sudden it could lead to a career. I heard one of your shows when you're interviewing the gentleman from Unbox, he was talking about how they are really interested in discovering new artists. So yeah, don't hide your light under a bushel. It's one thing to draw or sculpt something awesome, but people have to see it, get it out there and shove it in people's hands and stuff. If it's good, somebody will want to work with you.
Well, and that's what I think's so fun about our events is you can do that. I think DesignerCon's great. That's the the reference points we have, a DesignerCon and a 5 Points here in the U.S. to be able to walk around and show your work and see other people's work and talk and maybe find people to collaborate with and all that kind of stuff. So that's what makes our scene fun.
Exactly, and that's if I see anyone that remotely looks like an artist standing in front of my table, I'm like, you got anything? You got anything you did? And I don't know if you do that at shows and stuff. I love looking at other people's art, especially people that are just getting started. Because sometimes you can say that one thing to them that might send them on, a path. You might be the one missing link that gets them where they want to be. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome that you're a teacher. And I heard, is it Chris Reinak's teaching at the same school, yeah?
Yeah. Could
you imagine that, Teresa? Going to that school and these guys are your teachers?
I wish. I should just stop working and go back to school.
I didn't have much art schooling, so I grew up and I went to like the local community college, and I didn't know the work of what my teachers did. But how cool is it for someone that lives in Ohio who's, on these social media feeds and who's familiar with Jim's work and Chris's work and all, and you can actually go and take a class with these guys. That to me, that would be mind blowing from when I was a younger guy.
Cleveland's really not that far from me, and actually, I don't know if I've told you, Jim, but my grandma lives in Middleburg Heights.
I vaguely remember that.
So I could just be like, hey, Grams, I'm just going to come stay with you for a semester so I can go take this class, and I'll just take a little sabbatical from my life. It's easier said than done, but it would be pretty awesome, Gary, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I'd take a class with Chris. The kids were really excited. We were looking for teachers, and I actually suggested him because I knew he had taught at Ringling. He had taught Photoshop because he's a lot of people know that he does illustration work, but that dude has a career as a hardcore illustrator. He worked for Playboy and all these major publications. So that was his other life before toys. So he's serious business.
He is serious business. What's funny is both Chris and I, we both work for the girly magazines. I actually submitted a bunch of cartoons to Playboy back in the day, and they were fairly well received. And I worked under contract for Maxim for a year, doing a lot of the jokes of the month and that sort of stuff. But I love hearing people's backstories of what made them the artists they are today. Because a lot of people come into the toy scene and they just start collecting what they like or who they like, but people aren't always aware of what they've done in the past. Like, what's their body of work, who they work for, what do they do for full-time day jobs? Because a lot of that plays a very important role in what develops us as artists today. And, for some reason, a lot of artists just aren't forthcoming of what they've done in the past either. They almost shy away from telling people what they've worked on. And I, for one, love hearing what people have worked on in the past and what they've done.
Yeah, because it's formative stuff. It's stuff that, Gary, I'm sure you have something that, whether it's elementary school teacher or something, I guess as I get older, that stuff becomes really important, where I really think that that's the next, I only have a finite number of years doing this stuff. What's the next step? And it's hopefully getting someone else to have as awesome of a life. I've had an awesome life because I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm a happy man because of it. And I think positively, and I think like a kid, and to help someone else do that would be incredible.
Yeah, Jim, you sound like an amazing teacher. You're just meant to be a mentor for sure. And it kind of makes me think when you left American Greetings, you left a secure and safe and probably very well-paying gig, and a lot of people will stay with that one job their entire lives, and it has to be really a proud moment for your wife and family and friends to know that you left that job, took the experience, and kind of wrote your own story with it. You went on and did your own thing, and that's a very scary leap for most people to leave that secure job and try their hand at something else. It's so scary that most people usually don't do it, but you did it, and you had great success at it. And look at you today. You're pretty much being able to be selective with jobs and take on things that only you really want to work on. And that's awesome. Your kids must be so proud and just inspired by you.
Yes, definitely. My wife in particular is like, she's super supportive. She used to, my later years in the working world were, that it can get so stressful. And she'd see me coming home, and I take my art so serious, as any of us artists do, and I'd come home just a basket case. I would let the place I work get to me sometimes, and sometimes it wasn't the place so much as maybe a particular person you worked for.
Sure.
But she was very glad for me. She's glad to see me go off on my own, and the stress level now it's just virtually non-existent. And she's that part of it. So she's going to decon with me. She's going to be at the table. My daughter's going to be at the table. She can't wait. When she was a kid, she used to go to shows with me when I did comic book work and stuff at Garage Kids too. And I remember one time she was at the table. She's like 8 years old. She's sitting behind the table, and someone came over and said, "Can I have that bust?" And she said, "Yes, it's for sale." And the guy hands her a bill, and she took this $100 bill, and that changed her life. She's like, "I want to work your table all the time." And so she's gonna go, and she's gonna be behind the table and helping out, and it's exciting to have her there. So they definitely appreciate it.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to meeting the family.
Jumping back to toy stuff. So I know we were talking about how you do sculpting for some pieces and some not. But I know it seems that another focus for you is custom paint jobs. So I know, like, anytime I see a booth at an event, so like 5 Points, for example, it always seems like you have a handful of pieces that you've done a custom paint job and will sell or do lotteries on. So is that still a focus for you? Like, are you going to continue doing that with Kaiju Killer and maybe other pieces?
Yeah, because I was going to say it's actually fun in itself, but it's fun for the first one sometimes. And it's like when you're like, I had to gear up for this Taipei show, and when you do 3 king corpses in a row, it's like, wow, it's tedious because there's all that detail that I threw into it is now it's a curse. Now I have to paint it all. And
over and over.
And each one takes at least 2 days to paint one. So finding that time and actually doing a good job on them too, because there is so much. Yeah, it's tedious. So I don't do very many of them, but I will continue to do them because people want them and they really hunt these things down. So and it makes me feel good. So I'll keep doing them.
Do you have a favorite toy you've enjoyed doing a custom paint job on?
Of my own or?
Any. Is there a favorite custom you've ever done?
That's a hard question. How do you even remember all the customs you've done?
Yeah, and I don't know. I haven't done that many customs of other people's stuff. Some small, like, monies and things. I'll tell you, my buddy Justin Ishmael, he was one of the guys that started Mondo, and now he has his own company, and he did this 2-headed giant, Gigantus, and it's a vinyl toy, and it's based on an old magazine cover, a monster magazine from back in the 70s, and he sent me a bunch to paint. He's going to have them at Decon. I painted them a long time ago, but we haven't had a chance to do anything with them because we've both been busy. But I enjoyed those because they were based on a magazine I bought when I was a little kid that covered monster movies, and that was the cover monster. And he licensed it, and he did a kit of it, and I painted up about 7 of them.
Wow.
That was fun because of the nostalgia.
Cool. Okay. That was just a listener question.
I got one last question. Who would win in a fight, King Corpse or Kaiju Killer?
hey, Kaiju Killer, it's his job, man. He's got to win.
All right.
No, King's Corpse is like an undead zombie dude.
Well, it's funny is you get all kinds of, messages on Instagram and Facebook and everything, and I've had people all kinds of conjecture on how that would go down. And there's a lot of people that say they would team up. They would actually go back to back, and they would team up and fight other kaiju. And I'm like, whatever keeps it
Whatever
interesting.
gets you to stop talking to me about this conversation.
Well, we always talk about like backstories and stuff and how it doesn't matter. Like we just want cool toys.
And I find that to be a mix. There's people that walk up and they could give a crap about the story, but there's a lot of people that like the story, and I think it helps me create something if I have a story. So, yeah.
Do you have a backstory? Does your whole like universe have a backstory?
Oh yeah, even King Corpse, but King Corpse is kind of his is, based on another classic. It's based on the classic film. It's how he would actually come back to life, so it's not as interesting. But Kaiju Killer, yeah, he's got a whole origin story and everything, and if I had the time, I'd do a comic like I did with Rotten Rex. I just don't know when I'm going to have the time.
Oh, man.
We need to clone you.
Well,
I know. I want to read that. That'd be fun.
Or it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is maybe not just doing as many projects as possible, but just, I think, I was telling my wife the other day, I think I'm going to pull back next year and concentrate on building the specific brands I've already done rather than start creating as many new as possible.
I don't know if it's published. Like maybe when you like as part of the toy, there's a little bit of a backstory included with it. But like I would like to learn more about his backstory and read up on it and have little comics and all that. It'd be fun.
You would? Really?
I'm shocked by it too.
All right.
I mean, why not? I like stories. There was a comic actually, so this is super nerdy, super unrelated, but World of Warcraft. Like I got really into reading the lore books, and then there was this cute little comic, and I don't know, like it's intriguing. I mean, like the style of some of your stuff may not be in my cute aesthetic, Jim, but I'm all for reading up on it. It could be, I don't know, I like that kind of stuff.
Hey, well, let me put this little seed, because I know we're wrapping up, but this little seed of an idea, and anyone that's listening, is I have approached a couple of companies about doing something cute, because I did Care Bears, and I've done lots of cute stuff in my career. And what I get is usually like, yeah, but could we do a monster first? And so I haven't had a chance. So I'm hoping to do something cute here eventually, because I really have the itch to do so. So I'm hoping.
Have you ever thought about doing collaborations? We're seeing a lot of collaborative stuff coming, especially out of Asia. A lot of Labubu or Kasing Lung, his Labubu characters, being a lot of collaborations with other artists. Would you ever consider working with an artist who specifically maybe does cute, but then you take that, what George would say is smooth and dumb toy, and then taking it to the next level with your level of detail?
Yeah, actually, I've talked to one person recently about possibly doing that, but it's only in like beginning stages. But no, I'd love something like that, So I love collaboration for sure.
A Ham Groman Mooper Looper collaboration. You can take that wherever you want, and I'll contact the companies.
Wow. Hey, you heard it here first.
Oh, I'm serious.
Hey,
we can make this happen.
I'm excited. Bring me some cute. I'm ready. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's I'm all for it.
All right, well, let's talk.
It's out there in the ether now, so let's see who pulls it out of the sky.
Just talk to Chris. Just talk to Chris about how good it goes.
You son of a bitch. No, I got a new connection. I can make this happen now. No, don't cock block or collab block me.
I remember.
Jerk.
I'm kind of surprised, Jim, you've never collaborated with Chris Bradiak.
Yeah,
right there.
I guess there was one point I had an idea that I wanted to pitch him that we'd collaborate on, but I think Chris has become a really great friend of mine. But he does his own stuff, and he does it well. And I think that's where his focus is. And I think we're both kind of focused on our own stuff for the most part. And I don't know if it's like maybe we're afraid that if we collaborate, that would hurt the friendship or something. I don't know. I'd have to talk to him, because I'd love to. Because his kaiju stuffs, his little kaijus are kick-ass.
I love Kaiju Friday.
Yeah, they have all those cool details and everything. No, but I guess I have no excuses. We should, it's something that we should probably talk about.
I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I understand the whole friendship thing. You don't want to ruin it, but you got a good enough bond.
We wouldn't ruin it because we do. I think there's mutual respect and we both get along really good. So I don't think anything would ruin it. You're right. I got to talk to him.
Hey, more toys the better.
All right. That's a good idea, though.
Make it happen. Well, Jim, I'm going to take a page from Howard's turn to say you've said it all. I don't know what else we could talk about. And I know you're jet lagged and travel exhausted and probably want to reconnect with the family. And so I can't thank you enough for being willing to come on this week and when you did. I don't know why you did. You must be so tired and exhausted, but thank you.
But I want to say thanks for having me. I was looking forward to actually talking to you guys again and everything. And I've never met George, so it was at least like I'll come over and introduce myself at Decon. So it was nice at least having a preliminary conversation with you, George. So
I agree, and I feel like now I could call you Jim.
Yes.
Grandpa Jim.
Yes.
All right, Jim, why don't you take a brief moment and then just let our listeners know where they can find you.
I'm pretty much all Instagram these days. So, yes, it's jgroman60 on Instagram.
Okay.
It's just easy.
Easy peasy. Thanks again for coming on, Jim.
Yeah, thank you guys, and have a good evening.
All right, you too. Happy Halloween.
You too. We'll see you.
All right.
Thanks.
Teresa, where can people find you?
If people want to find me, check me out on Instagram. My username is tmhawk24.
George?
And you can also find me on Instagram at Double G Toys.
Same. Gary Ham on Instagram, superham.com. This has been the Marsham Toy Hour. We do this every week, not because we have to,
But
because we want to.
We got to work on that. That is not harmonious. But so until the next transmission, we're signing off. Bye.
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 George, remind me. I never know if you're going to join or not, so I say it kind of slow now.